Hello again, everyone. This is Chris Sciria. And no, this is not the NFL Pick 6 video. And no, Robert Harding is not with me either. And of course, you can't see me, unlike the videos. But this is our NFL podcast. And Justin Ritzel, our intrepid sports writer, is the man behind this podcast. And he's asked me to substitute for him to take the lead spot. And I told him that I could do it easily. So that's the intention. Easily. Yes, and
it's a walk in the park.
It is a walk in the park, man. This is a piece of cake. Talking to me is like breathing, okay? I can do both of them quite easily. So
Chris telling all podcast hosts out there that you basically do nothing.
No, you do not. It's a piece of cake, man. You know your stuff, you talk about it. Come on. We're not digging ditches here, okay? We're not cleaning toilets.
Digging ditches is the hardest job.
We're not cleaning toilets, okay? We're not washing dishes. This is literally candy here. This is stealing candy from the baby. So, all right. So let's talk a little NFL football. Justin's team, the Green Bay Packers, suffered I don't know if you call it a mortal blow, but it's pretty darn close. Aaron Rodgers done for the season, broken collar, but
probably done.
He's done for the year. You don't bring him back. I'm sorry, man. That's like Ryan Tannehill coming back. Oh, yeah, the knee surgery. Oh, yeah, he looks good in practice throwing the ball.
Yeah, just continue.
No, he's done for the year. The Packers are smart. They're done he's done for the year. I highly unlikely that the Aaron Rodgers comes back. So broken collarbone. It's tough, man. I mean, I was telling Justin earlier this week that I remember back in 1993 when Dan Marino tore his Achilles, and to me the season was just about over with. It was just like, hey, we're done. And then Scott Mitchell stepped in, and then Doug Peterson stepped in after Mitchell got hurt, and then Steve DeBerg stepped in after Peterson. I mean, it was just crazy how many quarterbacks the Dolphins went through that year, and they were 9-2 at one point. All they had to do was win one more game out of their last 5 to make the playoffs. And they lost all 5. The Packers, this is a team that has a good defense, has some weapons on offense, and their backup quarterback, whose name escapes me,
Brett Hundley.
There we go, Brett Hundley. He knows the system. Maybe, just maybe, he can quarterback the Packers into the playoffs. Justin, what are your thoughts on that possibility maybe happening?
Chris, I come here humbled. No, I think Brett Hundley. He's an interesting guy because the Packers took him in the 5th round of the draft in 2015. They traded up to get him. They obviously didn't need a quarterback. Brett Hundley stayed an extra year. He went to UCLA, stayed an extra year for his senior season, as a lot of guys do. Some don't, but some players feel they need that extra year. Hundley was actually a higher touted pick had he come out as a junior, but he's just one of those cases where he might have went back for a year and people saw him a little more and saw some things they didn't like, so that's why he slipped. But at one point, he was a very highly thought of quarterback prospect, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm stating the obvious when I say that the Packers are not going to be the same team with Aaron Rodgers. Understatement of the year. But can they be competitive? Can their offense function? I think they will, because I think back to the last time Aaron Rodgers got hurt. He broke his other collarbone. The Packers it was 2013. Their backup quarterback situation was a total mess. They brought in Vince Young during that training camp to try out. That was a disaster. They cut Vince Young. They bring in Seneca Wallace. They had Scott Tolzien, who started a couple games for the Colts this year. I think everybody knows about his talents. Or
lack thereof.
Yeah, so Rodgers breaks his collarbone. Seneca Wallace starts a couple games. He's completely ineffective. I think he got hurt. Then Scott Tolzien starts a couple. Turns the ball over like every other possession. That didn't work out. So finally they bring back old friend Matt Flynn, who had history with the Packers. He had stepped in for Rodgers a couple times and performed pretty well.
Remember him?
And when he came in, it's like the Packers offense, I don't want to say didn't miss a beat, but they were very good. That 2013 Packers offense was one of the best in the league with Aaron Rodgers missing half the year, which is kind of one of those things that you're like, really? So whatever Mike McCarthy did that year, he's going to need to do the same. He can't just, he really needs to step up and show what kind of coach he is because he doesn't have the luxury of an Aaron Rodgers right now. He's got a young quarterback that is going to need some guidance and is going to need to be put in positions to succeed. So we'll see if he can do that.
Well, and that's where really you find out who's a good head coach. I mean, how a head coach handles losing a starting quarterback, how he makes up for it, and what he does to keep the team running. Because, as you know, look, you got to keep playing the games. You're not going to run the white flag up, especially in week 7. I mean, you've got another 9 weeks of the season to go here, or 10 weeks of the season to go. So you can't just give up. You owe it to the other men on that roster to be as competitive as you can, and the Packers are going to do that, obviously. And I think there'll be a little bit of a learning curve for Hundley, but I think after he gets accustomed to working with the first string in practice and during the games, obviously, I think he'll play decent. I mean, look, he can't be Aaron Rodgers. You know that. I know that. I think everybody knows that. But I think if you can get some basically where the quarterback is not losing you the game. You're not asking him to win the game, but you're asking him not to lose it. So I think that's where the running game really becomes important. And if the Packers can, reestablish a rhythm here on offense and play turnover-free football and their defense steps up, the NFC North is not a scary division, to be honest with you. The Bears aren't really that good. The Lions are really inconsistent. That should be the team that should be winning this division now, but I think they've been inconsistent. I mean, their defense was horrible against the Saints last week. And the Vikings, they got their own quarterback issues. Bradford has been inconsistent, and Teddy Bridgewater may be coming back soon. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Vikings. So I think for the Packers, after the initial shock of losing Rodgers is hopefully it's over with now, that you think something, if we play good football, mistake-free football, we've got a chance maybe to win this division.
I think it's important to say that the Packers have been, even before Aaron Rodgers got hurt, the Packers were so banged up this year. Yeah. It was, just goes to show how valuable he is that they were 4-1, despite the fact, you got third string offensive tackles playing on the line. They played one game against the Bears where they had 4 guards and a center, basically. The defense it's had its ups and downs. I hope for Brett Hundley's sake and, thinking ahead to what his value is going to be, because they're going to try and move him, assuming he does anything. They'll move him for a draft pick. You just want to see him where he gets a full toolbox to play with. You don't want him to have to play with a banged up offensive line or receivers that are hurt or whatever. So we'll see what happens. The Packers, as you kind of mentioned, they need to play complementary football. Mm-hmm. They can't just rely on the offense, or the passing game to go make things happen. The defense needs to step up, and they need to have that running game going to kind of maybe make the defensive players think a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add about the Packers?
Not about the Packers, but I think we're going to go in this direction anyway. But just that division, the NFC North, as you just said, it's still very much up for grabs.
Absolutely.
For this, really the same reasons that you said, and really the entire NFC is up for grabs, which I think we're going to talk about right now.
Yeah, our next topic was just basically the unpredictability of the NFL so far. I mean, you look at last week alone. I mean, Kansas City, the last unbeaten, falls at home to Pittsburgh, who, of course, had gotten beat the week before by Jacksonville. The Giants go into Denver, which is a very difficult place to win, and beat the Broncos after they hadn't won a game. The Giants hadn't won a game all season. Baltimore's not playing very well, and they usually are a good team. Um, there's just a lot of inconsistency in this league. I mean, you just never know what you're going to get from week to week. The Cowboys were supposed to be pretty good this year, and they're middling. The Raiders were supposed to really be the best team in the AFC West, and I think they're 2-3, right? So, or 2-3 or 2-4. So, it's been a league of inconsistency. And, you don't know whether it's because, and we've talked about this before, at least I know Robert and I have, it's like, you've cut back on contact in practice. You've tried to do all these things for player safety. And I think as a result, I'm not saying that player safety isn't important, but as a result of some of these watered down practices and things, that some of these teams are not really ready to play on Sunday. And you get these types of games where, like I said, the Giants get beat at home by San Diego. They're 0-5, and then they go into Denver and they beat the Broncos. And like I said, Jacksonville beats Pittsburgh, and then Pittsburgh goes on the road and beats Kansas City. It's just a fluky league this year. It's really tough to predict some long-term things right now. I would not want to be a gambler. Let's just put it that way. I would be literally tearing my hair out if I was a gambler this year because it's just so unpredictable. So,
well,
Justin, I was just going to say,
I have to throw this in here. I picked the Steelers to beat the Chiefs.
All right, congratulations. There you go.
I mean, every squirrel finds their nut once in a while.
Broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it totally is, and it just, I've read a lot of articles this week, just between the Patriots just not being the same Patriots. I think their record is a little deceiving because they've had to pull a couple wins out of their butts that they necessarily didn't look good. Aaron Rodgers' injury, that changes the landscape for the Packers. Teams that haven't been competitive in a long time, like the Rams and the Jaguars, are suddenly in the mix. The Eagles are the best team in the NFC record-wise right now. It's just insane. So, it's tough to like really get a grip on even who's good and who's bad. Right. It's just everybody's just kind of really close to each other and can't really seem to separate.
I think it's going to be a month before we really know where this is going. I really believe that because I think it takes time for some separation here. I mean, I know this is week 7, but it still feels like it's the beginning of the season. We're almost halfway through, but it just doesn't feel that way. It seems like that for some teams, they're just getting going, and I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Is what teams can put together a few wins in a row and get some momentum as we head towards November. And like I said, where teams that like there's some separation where the teams that are the contenders start to get some wins going, a streak going, and separate themselves from the bottom feeders who are like maybe they got 2 wins now, they're 2-3, they're 2-4, they're close, but they're going to fade down the stretch there. We'll see. And then of course we do have some good teams. You never know. I mean we talked about this before. Last year Minnesota was 5-0, and what happened to them? So. I think there's maybe even a chance there's a team that's really doing well, like the Eagles right now, that if something happens, boom, the bottom drops out. So we'll see.
Hey, everybody's an injury away from some from their season going in the tank. Take it from me.
Mm-hmm. Take it from me.
Yeah. Well, Cutler, I don't know. MVP Cutler?
No, I'm not going that far. And if you want to transition into the Dolphins, we can do that now. It's up to you. If you got something else you want to talk about.
I had something and it slipped my mind. I don't. You feel free to correct me, Chris, if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's been a while since we've had one of those wild card teams just kind of go on one of those crazy runs and shock everybody and make the Super Bowl and possibly win it. I think this is the year where that kind of thing happens because there's such a small difference between probably who's going to be the number 1 seed in each conference between who's going to be the 4, 5, and 6 seeds. So it's obviously super early to even be talking about this, but I'll put it in there right now. Don't be surprised if this is the year where another wild card team gets to the Super Bowl.
I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right, and it is going to be interesting to see what happens with the wild cards. And can a team get on a run? I think it's so tough now because you've got to win 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl, and that's very difficult. But on the other hand, as of right now, we don't have a powerhouse team. I mean, the Patriots have clearly been the best team in the AFC for the last few years. Well, more than the last few years, but you know what I mean. They're clearly as long as Tom Brady's upright, the Patriots are the favorite in the AFC. Of course, this year their defense is not playing well, and that makes them kind of susceptible that maybe that they don't get the number 1 seed overall. Maybe they have to go on the road and win a playoff game, and maybe they're not invincible and they don't make the Super Bowl. As for the NFC, I think anybody could win. Almost anybody could win it. It's so wide open. I mean, Dallas, Philly, Washington, you never know. The Lions, if they can get their defense figured out. The Rams, all of a sudden, I mean, the Seahawks, I mean, you can't really, are the Seahawks, I mean, they're a team that's a veteran team, they're a year older. Is their window starting to shut, But there's so many teams in the NFC that, if they, like I said, if they get hot, you could see them making a run and possibly winning the NFC Championship as a wild card team with 3 straight road wins. So we'll see.
Here's my sleeper team, and a team that I think I had them around the 7-9 to 8-8 range before the season, but actually the team that's going to be playing my Green Bay Packers, the Saints. Mm-hmm. Keep an eye on that team because I think what they've done this year is, for the most part since they won that Super Bowl, that defense has just been putrid.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it was the fallout from the whole Greg Williams, the Bounty Gate.
Rob Ryan. They finally got the Rob Ryan stink out of there.
They had him there for a while, and that obviously went as expected.
They had to air out the Superdome. It took a long time to get that stink out.
That defense, it just needs to be competent. Mm-hmm. It does. You can't be giving up 75-yard touchdowns 3 times a game. I think they've done that. I think you still have Drew Brees.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound crazy, but I think it's better for them. They've taken the ball out of Drew Brees' hands a little bit. Mm-hmm. The Saints have been notorious for, Drew Brees racks up these 5,000-yard seasons, but it's because he throws the ball 700 times a year, and for a quarterback his age, I don't think that's the best way to win. They have 2 good running backs. Both are Mark Ingram's kind of more of a pounder guy. The new kid, Kamara, is one of those pass-catching running backs who's he's not big, but he's quick. And then Drew Brees can make the throws when he has to, but you're not leaning on him as much. So I think in that division where maybe we still don't quite know what the Panthers are, they got beaten down by the Eagles last week. The Falcons, as you know, after the Dolphins beat them, they're obviously not the same team as they were last year. That division's up for grabs, and when teams are all so close together, I'll take the teams with the best quarterbacks that are being put in position to succeed.
Right, and there's a team that you just brought up that we didn't mention earlier, Atlanta. I mean, they got off to a good start. They were 3-0, and now they're 3-2. And this was a team that, you're wondering how the Super Bowl was going to, the after effect of the Super Bowl was going to play with them. And, the first 3 weeks of the season, it's like, well, they completely have moved on. Now it's like, well, they've lost leads in their last 2 games in the second half. So it's like, is there a Super Bowl hangover? I don't know. But it is interesting. Like I said, you have all these teams that were favorites now that just seem to be having their issues. And you don't know whether it's something that they can work out in the short term and be there come December, or whether this is the sign of something bigger. And come December, they're not going to be in contention for the postseason. We'll see what happens.
Well, I remember saying this to Robert when we did the first episode of the podcast, and you were on vacation, and we were just kind of talking about teams that maybe could surprise this year, whether it was in a positive or a negative way. I said the Chargers were going to surprise, and how's that worked out?
Well, they've won 2 in a row.
But the other thing I said was concerning the Falcons is that their offense was historically good last year.
Yeah.
And it is so hard to have that kind of season on offense and come back and be at that same level. I mean, the 2007 Patriots to 2008, that's a weird... That doesn't totally count because Tom Brady got hurt. But you look at the 2004 Colts when Peyton Manning was breaking records. They weren't the same team the next year. Still good, but not the record-breaking offense that they were. The 2011 Packers, they came back. Rodgers wins the MVP. They look unstoppable on offense. They came back down to earth the next year. The 2013 Denver Broncos, Peyton Manning breaks the touchdown record. They come back. They're not the same team. It's just really hard to, when defenses have an entire summer to study what you do, and plus they're bringing a new play caller this year. Kyle Shanahan's gone, so it's not shocking to me that their offense isn't what it was, and that Matt Ryan isn't necessarily maybe the MVP quarterback that he was last year. But yeah, I'd be alarmed if they've been so bad. I'd be alarmed at what they've done.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, from having watched them last week, they had no running game. They could not really run the ball. They had one big run, and that was it.
Which is weird because they have two running backs who can both run it really well and catch it.
And Miami did a great job of stopping the run game, with the exception of one big play, which went for about 44 yards. But defensively, I mean, they got after Matt Ryan. And in the first half, Matt Ryan looked like the old Matt Ryan. I mean, he threw that deep ball for a touchdown, and he was eating up Miami, especially on third down. And then in the second half, it was another story. They got more pressure on him. They got to him. They sacked him. So it was a different situation in the second half there. But like I said, I think it's still too early to say, the Falcons are not the team that they were last year. There's still so much football left, and we'll see what happens. So, all right, let's transition into Miami, and we'll make this quick to wrap it up. So the Dolphins have now put together 2 wins. They were shut out in the first half last week. It was very ugly on Dolphins Twitter, very, very ugly. And I was thinking, they're down 17-0, and I understand this offense hasn't done much, but if they can just get a touchdown on the first drive of the second half, it's 17-7, and to me, that is a workable deficit. And sure enough, they did, and they made it 17-14, and then I'm like, this is a ball game. And I give Miami credit because I think that they easily could have just, look who's here. Robert Harding walking in, interrupting my thoughts on the Dolphins.
Are we going to have to start over?
No, we're not starting over.
Someone had to interrupt.
We're about to wrap it up here,
Those
actually.
terrible
But
thoughts.
we'll let Robert get his 2 cents. But anyways, the Dolphins just, again, their defense played amazing in the second half. They really got to Ryan. And offensively, Jay Cutler, I mean, he did enough to get this team going. But Jay Ajayi is the workhorse, is the wheels that makes the Dolphins offense run. And he had almost 130 yards rushing last week. I think that was the biggest thing. Even though he hasn't scored a touchdown all year, and a true fun fact, Dolphins have not scored a touchdown on the ground at all this season. They have no rushing touchdowns. It's all been Cutler's arm. So I want to think that maybe this 20 points in the second half maybe is the turning of the corner. They got the Jets this week. They played garbage against the Jets last month. I was there. I witnessed it. It was ugly. I want to think that maybe this team is starting to get their offense going, and if they do get it going with the defense they have, I like Miami to win a few games here, and they should beat the Jets this week. All right, Robert, go ahead. Jump in. Talk about whatever you want. We talked about Aaron Rodgers.
But enough about the second half last week.
We've talked about Aaron Rodgers and the impact on the Packers. We've talked about the inconsistencies of the NFL. I mean, teams like the Falcons have fallen back to earth. The Raiders, how the Giants can lose 1 week, go 0-5, and then they go into Denver and they beat the Broncos. Just Kansas City loses at home to Pittsburgh, who had lost at home the week before to the Jaguars. It's just such an inconsistent league that you really can't make any even really short-term predictions. Everything is just jumbled every week from week to week.
That's why I'm feeling good about the Bills, guys. That's all I'm going to say.
Can I go on a rant really quick?
Go for it. It's your podcast. Man.
So, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, I handed over the hosting duties to Chris this week because it would have felt weird just asking myself about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So on AP this week,
The Associated
I think it was
Press,
yesterday.
by the way.
Yeah, Associated Press. There was a story about Tyrod Taylor just the same old like story of like answering questions about if he's the quarterback or not, blah blah blah. Enough. Just stop it.
This is his third season.
How many times are we going to do this? I mean, I understand he's not going to win an MVP. He's not going to throw for 4,000 yards every year. But, you know, no matter what you think of the statistic, the guy is, passer rating wise, is up there with the best of them. You know, I look at his numbers compared to Russell Wilson. There's not a difference. Okay, there's no difference yet. Tyrod gets, you know, why is this guy our quarterback? We need somebody else new. He can't make plays, blah, blah, blah. And on top of that, who's he throwing the ball to?
Well,
has there been any organization that has done less to set up their quarterback for success? Because I would say no.
Yeah, well, this gets to the whole point. I mean,
sorry, I raised my voice.
This gets to the whole point with Taylor. You know, I actually like him as a quarterback. I think that the Bills could be successful with him, but you look at during Sammy Watkins' tenure, like he was the number one receiver. And when Watkins was healthy, 100% healthy, not just in the game to be in the game, they had some magical moments together. Sciria saw firsthand what happens when Taylor was thrown to a healthy Sammy Watkins last year when they lit up the Dolphins.
They still lost the game.
But I'm just saying the offense tore it up. That was when the Bills, didn't have a defense. But, when he has weapons to throw to, Charles Clay was a big loss for him because that was really, outside of LaShawn McCoy, his number one receiver to go to. The receiving core is depleted. They're picking up guys. Deontay Thompson has been brought in, because of his past relationship with Taylor. I mean, this is a patchwork receiving core that they have, and he's trying to make the most of it. But I think that he would be doing better, even with the patchwork game, if the running game was better, which hasn't been the case. And we're still talking about a team that's 3-2, by the way.
So, well, and ultimately, he doesn't turn the ball over.
Right.
Like he doesn't throw interceptions. What's he throw? I mean, I know his attempts are lower than a lot of people, but what does he throw? Like 6 interceptions a year, 7 interceptions a year?
Yeah, I think last year he was it was somewhere around 20 touchdowns, six picks.
Yeah, so like he's he's not going to be one of those guys that you win a Super Bowl because of him. He's not on that level, but if with the proper pieces around him, which the Bills have not delivered, they tried to when they traded up for Sammy Watkins, but other than that, they haven't supported him at all. So I just to Bills fans out there listening, I know because I go on Facebook on Sunday and Twitter and all that, and I follow a lot of Bills people, and I just see like, oh, Tyrod sucks. He's not the guy. We need to move on. Blah blah blah. Just stop it. Enough.
I think this is the year we figure it out, though. I think this is the year where you realize, like, okay, he's the long-term future quarterback.
Well, I don't know if they do though, because you're never going to really know what the guy is when he's throwing to total bumps.
Right. Now I give you that, but on the other hand, a great quarterback can make, so wide receivers look like all pros.
Yeah, but how many quarterbacks in history, including current, have been able to do that? We're talking like, Even Marino early in his years, he had Clayton and Duper to throw to. So all these. I mean, Brady is an exception. Rodgers, even Rodgers. When he lost his receiving core, 2 years ago.
And
I mean, he felt the impact of that.
In 2015, everybody talks about Jordy Nelson tore his ACL. It wasn't just that. It was the combination of no Nelson. And both Randall Cobb and Devontae Adams were dealing with injuries too, so they were at best 75% of themselves, and they just weren't the same. So I mean, even the greats, hey, look back, because I've debated with people about Tom Brady a lot. I'm not going to get into that now, but look back at Tom Brady in 2013 when Gronk only played half the season. Mm-hmm. Nobody talks about how badly Brady played because he threw for a lot of yards, but he averaged like 6.5 yards per attempt.
Yeah. That was all short stuff underneath.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Not terrible, but it's not. It's mediocre.
Yeah.
So
that I think the year that you're talking about, that was a year when he leaned on his running backs a lot, and he was working the receivers over the middle, those short passes that any other team would be dink and dunk, check down. Trent Edwards got heat for that back in the day. Captain check down, all that other stuff. Brady's made it an art for him, but that year, that's what he leaned on because he didn't really have any help on the outside with receivers. I mean, you think about Brady, outside of Randy Moss, he hasn't had a lot of big receivers in his career. Deion Branch maybe was probably one that shined under him, but Branch wasn't lighting it up. So, he's leaned on. It's not a bad thing to lean on your running backs and all the other stuff, but the fact remains that with a guy like Taylor, you don't have the superstar wide receiving core like you have on some other teams, and he doesn't even have really a number one target that's healthy right now. So
no, he has nothing.
What do you expect? That's why I think. I mean, you build some pieces. You get some better pieces on the offensive line in there. They get their scheme figured out, which seems to be giving them problems. And you get that running game going. I think that can alleviate some of the pressure. But
okay,
who am I to know?
All right, I think we're going to wrap it up. All right, we're going to wrap it up. All right, folks.
Cheers, get antsy.
Thanks for. Well, we have a video to do, by the way. Plug.
We give the people what they want.
Yes, we do, whether they like it or not. And so we'll be doing our video on Facebook Live, which by the time you listen to this will be over with. But you can go on our Facebook page at the Auburn Citizen and check that out. So, all right, Joss. I hope I did a good job filling in for you.
Yeah, you were excellent. Hopefully.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Hopefully. No, I'm being serious.
Okay.
But I'm just saying. Hopefully there won't be another situation where I have to come in and hand over hosting duties so I can answer Aaron Rodgers' questions.
Yeah. All right,
coming next week, Brett Hundley tears his ACL.
Oh, wow. Wow, man, looks could kill. Robert would be dead right now.
Man, we should have locked that damn door.
And let's just wrap it up with that one, folks. And enjoy the games, and we will listen to you. We'll be back next week, hopefully.